All right. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. Well, I guess that would just depend upon when you guys are watching this particular video. But today our conversation is going to be about sedimentary rocks. Last week we talked about igneous rocks, and the week before that we talked about minerals. Remember, minerals serve as a basis for rocks. So rocks are made up of minerals. So today our conversation is going to be about sedimentary rocks. What do you think about when you hear the word sedimentary? I want you to keep that in the background. But we're going to do a quick review before we get started with this lesson. All right, so we're going to do a quick igneous rock review, and it says review concept map igneous rocks. We're going to start right here on the right side, and it says forms from magma that erupts onto the Earth's surface, and it's common around volcanoes. What do you think this is? What type of igneous rock do you think this is? All right, if you identified an extrusive igneous rock, you're exactly correct. So it says cools quickly and has a blank texture. So because igneous rocks cool so quickly, the mineral crystals don't have time to form or develop or to grow larger. So it's going to have a fine grained texture. All right. The next type, so if you've guessed this one was extrusive igneous rock, this one's going to have to be a what? It says when magma pushes into surrounding rock below the Earth's surface. So this is the key. Remember, igneous rocks form from magma, and this says below the Earth's surface, so it forms inside the Earth. So it's going to have to be an intrusive igneous rock. And it says cools slowly, has a blank texture. Because the temperature inside the Earth is so much warmer than the temperature at the surface of the Earth, that magma is going to cool down quickly, so the mineral crystals are going to have time to grow larger, giving that rock a coarse grained texture. So hopefully you got both of those correct. Sorry about that. All right, the next thing we're going to take a look at is just the overview of the rock cycle. And we talked about this a little bit last week. So the rock cycle is just the processes about which rocks change from one type of rock to another type of rock. So any rock that melts, it's going to turn into magma. And when that magma cools and solidifies, it's going to form an igneous rock. Today, our conversation is going to be about sedimentary rocks. So sedimentary rocks form from the compaction and cementation of sediments. So those are the two processes that form sedimentary rocks, compaction and cementation. But we'll talk a little bit more about that in the lesson. So let's move on, shall we? All right, now you're at the point where you should be taking your notes. I can actually move this up here. All right, so I'm just going to give you just a minute or so for you to copy this down, and then we'll just kind of talk through the notes. And while you're doing that, I'm going to go ahead and take a drink of this coffee if you don't mind. I hope you guys are staying safe and doing well. All right, let's start with the notes. It says form at or near the Earth's surface. And we'll just fill in the blanks, and we'll talk more about these as we go through the notes. It says rocks on the surface are weathered. Now, when we talk about weathering, weathering is just a breakdown of rocks into smaller pieces. And those smaller pieces of rocks are called sediment. So you could have wind break down rocks using other rocks. You could have ice in the form of ice wedging. You could have rocks that move from the top of a slope to the bottom of the slope and be broken into many pieces. So all these forces in nature that break rock into smaller pieces, that process is called weathering. And those pieces are called sediments. It says sediments are moved from one place to another by erosion. So erosion are forces that carry sediment and move that sediment from one place to another, like wind. Sediments are carried by the wind. When that wind runs out of energy, it drops the sediment that it's carrying. You can have water that's carrying sediments. When water dumps itself into a larger body of water, it kind of slows down and drops the sediments that it's carrying. So when you think about erosion, think about forces that move sediment from one place to another. And then it says sediments are deposited in layers with the older ones on the bottom. So when those erosional forces like wind or water or gravity that are carrying sediments with it, when those erosional forces drop those sediments, that dropping of sediments is called deposition. They're just depositing the sediments. They're just laying down the sediments that they're carrying. Okay. So this principle, it says sediments are deposited in layers with the older one here. The older rock layers are going to be found at the bottom. So as you go from the bottom of the rock layers, because this one was laid down first, then this layer, then this layer, then this layer, then this layer, and then this layer, and you're going to find the younger layer closest to the surface of the earth. That only makes sense. That's actually called principle of superposition. And I think you'll see that in the video that you're going to watch later on in the lesson. And it says layers are compacted and cemented together. And we'll talk about what those words mean. To compact something just means to push it, to press it together. And then when you think about something being cemented together, it's got to have some kind of glue that cements these rock layers together. And the minerals that are found in these rocks actually serve as the cement to hold these layers of rock together. Okay. So next in our notes, it says no heat involved. So sedimentary rocks form at the surface of the earth, at or near the surface of the earth, but don't involve any type of heat. It says pressure is exerted from the rock layers above, causing compaction. So in this picture right here, you see these layers of rock here. And remember, we said we'll find the oldest rock on the bottom layer. And as you go from the bottom layer to the top, the rocks get progressively younger, because the layers get progressively younger. These layers are just called strata. So the process, it says the process in which sedimentary rocks are arranged in layers, that process is just called stratification. So the layers in it, the horizontal layers are called strata. And the process by which these horizontal layers are laid down is just called, or arranged, is just called stratification. Okay. All right, now we're going to take a look at the different types of sedimentary rocks, the different types of sedimentary rock. The first type that you're going to come across, or that we're going to take a look at, is a clastic sedimentary rock. And I'll give you just a second to go ahead and write that down. Clastic sedimentary rock. So it says classic, made of fragments of rock cemented together with calcite and quartz. Now, calcite and quartz are examples of different types of minerals. This breccia here is an example of a classic sedimentary rock. So these pieces right in here are just pieces of minerals. Remember, rocks are made up of minerals. So you think about classic sedimentary rocks, think about rocks that are made up of fragments of other rocks that are cemented together like this. Now, classic sedimentary rocks can range from fine grain to coarse grain. We really won't get into that conversation in this, but you'll see it in the video that you're going to watch. But classic sedimentary rocks, they're made up of fragments of other rocks cemented together with minerals. The next type of sedimentary rock is a chemical sedimentary rocks. It says minerals crystallize out of a solution to become a rock. So this limestone is an example of a chemical sedimentary rock. I'll give you just a second to write that down and kind of explain the process in which chemical sedimentary rocks form. All right. When you think about chemical sedimentary rocks, it says minerals crystallize out of a solution to become a rock. So when you think about a like a saltwater solution, you've got water and salt. What happens to that saltwater solution when all the water evaporates out of that solution? You're going to be left with salt. So when you think about how chemical sedimentary rocks form, think about these rocks forming out of a solution. So what's left, the solid part that's left, is going to be that chemical sedimentary rock. So like boiling salt water. When you boil all the water out of the salt, when that water goes from a liquid to a vapor, all you're left with is just salt. Okay, and that's how these chemical sedimentary rocks form. So they form out of a solution. A lot of these rocks formed out of water solutions where water was evaporated and it left these the solid parts, these aggregates, and that's how these chemical sedimentary rocks form. Again, you'll get more detail about that when you watch the video. Another type of sedimentary rock is an organic sedimentary rock. It says organic sedimentary rocks form from the remains of plants and animals. So these are rocks that form from the remains of plants and animals. I'll give you just a second to go ahead and write that down. And this is an example of coal, and coal is an example of an organic sedimentary rock. All right. So when you think about organic sedimentary rocks, think about rocks that form from the remains of plants and animals. Coal and organic limestone are probably going to be the two most predominant rocks that we're going to discuss and that you'll see in the video that are organic sedimentary rocks. But the word organic means they form from living things. So organic sedimentary rocks are rocks that form from living things. Remember, this is quite different from a mineral. Minerals form from inorganic material. So that's another difference between rocks and minerals. Remember, rocks are made up of minerals. So these organic sedimentary rocks can contain minerals and they can contain once living things. All right. All right, this next slide, what you're going to do with this next slide, you're going to click on the Quizlet and you're going to use the Quizlet to define the processes that form sedimentary rocks. You've got weathering, erosion, deposition, compaction, and cementation. So once you click on this, you're going to use the Quizlet. You're going to write down the definition for each one of the terms, a description for each one of the terms, and you're going to draw a picture. Or you can, if you're doing this via your laptop, you can actually copy and paste a picture, or you can just draw a picture. That's completely up to you that represents each one of these terms. Okay. So the lesson wasn't that long for today, but I need you to go back and make sure that you complete your vocabulary activity for the processes that form sedimentary rocks. And also make sure that you watch, and I'm going to go ahead and advance it to the next slide. Make sure that you watch the sedimentary rock video. And when watching the video, add notes to your notes. Okay, the notes that we just took together for sedimentary rocks. Make sure that you go back and as you're watching this video, you can add notes to your notes so you can gain a better understanding of the different types of sedimentary rocks and how and where sedimentary rocks form. Okay. All right, guys. You guys have a great one and be safe. Miss you guys.